I knew a very humble priest. His name was Father Adrian. He had led a difficult life. He was an orphan when he was a little boy and grew up in a huge orphanage. He was a very spiritual man. He had a number of eccentricities. Those who knew him thought that he was rather neurotic. He loved to worry and fidget about things and do this and that. But he was a man of extremely simple purpose. And his extreme simplicity got him into plenty of trouble. He told the truth in simple and unvarnished forms, and they weren't too ready to hear him. He did what he was supposed to do. I assure you, he'd be somebody that you'd never invite to your birthday party. A man of utter simplicity. He used to take his vacation, which most of us desperately need, by putting a library in order. You know, he wasn't the most balanced person I ever met. And you couldn't use him as a model. But he loved God. And you know, the longer I knew him, the more I realized that he was disappearing. I once had a funeral, and the undertaker said to me, "Oh, do you belong to the same community as Father Adrian?" And I said, "Yes." "Oh," he said, "what a wonderful man." I said, "How do you know him?" He says, "Well, whenever we have anybody to bury who has no religion, no faith, and the family says they'd just like to get a clergyman there, I call him up. And he comes and he just says such beautiful, simple prayers, and he never takes an offering, ever." Little did these people know, who had little or no religion, that the man who came to pray with them was a man who I at least think was close to eternal life. He was chaplain of the Sisters of Mother Hawthorne, the Hawthorne Dominicans, in the Home for the Cancerous Poor for 15 years. And the sisters used to tell me, he's dead now, that when patients would be in a coma, they'd be far beyond any recall. They couldn't move, they couldn't think, they had no response at all. Father Adrian would stand there for a long time and stroke their hand and talk to them. And they would respond to him from the coma. Many's a soul. The last awareness they had of this world was of this very simple man. But he never read books about contemplation. He was a very simple Christian. He read the Bible. He read the lives of the saints. If I talked to him about all this, he would have thought it was a bit exotic, you see. But he was a man of extremely simple virtue. I've often been after the friars to dig him up, because I would have a suspicion that his body never corrupted, because he was dead for years before they buried him. He was dead to this world. And interestingly enough, the people who knew him only had one experience of him, and that was the experience of great charity, of great kindness, and of great humility. Now, what is that an example of? To me, it is an example of transforming union. I knew some of the darknesses he had gone through. I was with him when he went through one of them. And there were many. He was a man that had a half a dozen Calvaries in his life. He was a man that you couldn't praise. I once gave him a gift that many people signed, and he gave it away. Giving him a gift was stupid. I once had to get Mother Teresa to give a talk when I first met her, and I said, "Mother Teresa, what topic would you like to speak about?" What a stupid question. She only talks about one topic. She only has one topic, right? She should have said Holman Wright speeches. You think she wrote the speech that she gave at the UN? Of course not. She gave the speech 1,000 times in her life. What was it about? Charity. The love of the poor. See, these people are operating on a different wavelength. I don't want to put my dear friend Mother Teresa into the unitive way. She'd get mad at me if she ever saw this. So I only do that with those who are deceased. Now, I suppose as people are very different, God comes to them in different ways. To a mentally ill person, he'll come one way, and it will heal much of their mental illness, as it did with Saint Benedict Joseph Labre. A person who is a penitent, like Francis Thompson, God will come another way. A person like Teresa of Avila, who was a worldly religious, who was only converted after a number of years in religious life, he will come another way. Many times it has been observed that women mystical writers, when they come close to God, have the experience of someone coming close to them, where the men's spiritual writers have the experience of going up a high mountain, of going into the sky. It varies. One saint said the closest thing it was to was purgatory. Saint Catherine of Genoa, who wrote her book on purgatory, which comes close to expressing some of this. She says, I do not believe that it would be possible to find any joy comparable to the soul in purgatory, except for the souls in heaven. A joy which goes on increasing day by day as God more and more flows in upon the soul, which he does abundantly in proportion as every hindrance to his entrance is consumed away. The hindrance is the rust of sin. The fire consumes the rust, and thus the soul goes on laying itself open to the divine inflowing. She's talking about purgatory, and she says purgatory begins right here, right now. So even in this life, if you're struggling way back here, or here, or here, if you are open to the spiritual life, a tiny little bit of contemplation comes into your soul. Wherever we turn, wherever we go, it comes.